Howdy everyone. Welcome to today's video on Indiana and the 2026 Primary Election Analysis Series. Every U.S. state has different rules, procedures, and voting days for their primary election. These rules change over time, all adding to the complexity of our primary election process. The goal of this series is to help educate my fellow Americans on this information as best as I can. With this information, I hope to get the country moving back in the correct direction, a nation that respects international law and human rights. Granted, that really has never been the United States. Our history is filled with war crimes and various human rights abuses. Since the start of Trump's Epstein war against Iran, war crimes have been committed daily by Israel and its vassal state, the United States. Elections have consequences. The actions of the fascist Trump regime should have hopefully made that very clear, despite that it should have already been clear after the disasters in George W. Bush's wars in the Middle East, or any of our war crime intervention wars from previous decades. The actions happening now are a direct result of Biden's failures in his final 16 months in office. The failure of not stopping Israel's genocide of Palestine. The Democratic Party has refused to address the real reasons for their 2024 election loss. To be clear, since they won't, the majority of blame for the 2024 election loss belongs to Kamala Harris, her campaign, and the party. In every election, it is the candidate's responsibility to go out and earn the most votes to win. For over 10 years now, the Democratic Party and the DNC have done the opposite. They have berated Americans and act as if our votes are owed to them. Biden refused to step aside for an open primary while supporting Israel's genocide. Then, Kamala ran a terrible campaign, refusing to distance herself, both from Biden's policies figuratively, and Liz Cheney literally. Those are only a few reasons, out of the dozens, for their 29% approval rating. I understand not wanting to vote for Democrats when they have been uninspiring, to say the least. But as mentioned earlier, by not participating in elections, our whole planet, all of us, are now on the expedited path to mass extinction. Congress should have acted by now and impeached Trump. Here's why they haven't. In the United States, out of our 535 congressional representatives, the majority are soulless, empty vessels manipulated by corporate and Israeli interests in the Epstein class. This did not happen as a result of the 2024 election or the last several elections. This has been a concentrated effort by the Epstein class for decades. As I see it, we only have two nonviolent options. The violent option would most likely be a massive failure with unknown death and destruction in the process. If there was enough organization around a general strike that could bring the economy to a halt, we could potentially see some demands being met to improve conditions. Unfortunately, the fascist robber baron Epstein class probably has the resources to outlast a general strike. Most Americans don't have enough money saved up for several months of rent and food payments without income. That then leaves us with the democratic election process that still exists for now. We must elect a brand new Congress to impeach Trump, abolish ICE, and begin the process to hold everyone responsible for the crimes against humanity. Does this plan have flaws? Of course it does. Our country is corrupt and filled with fraud. There remains the what-if scenarios. What if Trump cancels the elections or deploys troops and ICE Gestapo to polling places? These are valid questions. I hope governors are working with their respective Department of States and election officials to secure these elections from federal thugs. However, I suggest we address that when and if it happens, and plan and organize as if elections will happen. The election processes are still in place and are controlled at the state and local levels of government. It is decentralized enough that the American people still have a say in who our representatives are. For those who say voting isn't important or that your vote doesn't matter, you are simply incorrect. If voting didn't matter, billions of dollars would not be spent to influence election outcomes. Trump and Republicans would not be pursuing every effort to rig the elections. To stop that from happening, we need a large enough voter turnout to make the results too big to rig. That will only happen if there are enough candidates who win their primary elections to inspire more people to vote in November. These requirements for the secular lefty approved candidates are on screen now. The candidates I spotlight in this series must demonstrate they sincerely believe and will fight for at least one of the policies listed, support for more obviously being preferred. For the 2026 midterms, for as long as our current Congress remains spineless, the first priority I want to hear out of every Democratic candidate, or any independent or third-party candidate, party doesn't matter, the message does. And that message better be to impeach Trump and abolish ICE. That's obviously not the full message. Each candidate should, of course, have their own additional campaign messaging after that, but it better start with impeach Trump and abolish ICE. For those looking for what kinds of political groups to trust when looking for candidates to support, here are a few that I trust when looking for secular lefty-approved candidates. While not every approved candidate is supported by every group listed here, and I am not affiliated with any of these groups, I spotlight them in this series to inform you as potential voters. When you research candidates, check if any of them have been endorsed by these groups. Endorsements aren't everything, but knowing which groups to trust is vital right now. On the subject of impeaching Trump, that is the primary objective for citizens' impeachment. Their courage candidates are committed to pursuing impeachment of Donald Trump on day one of their term. Additionally important is ending military and financial support to Israel as they pursue their genocidal campaigns against everyone in the region they view as in the way of their greater Israel project. As Track AIPAC shows in this image, the majority of both Republicans and Democrats in the House are funded by the Israeli lobby, 329 in total out of 435 seats. Our government works for Israel, and we need to change that. Track AIPAC has helped bring to light the money trails that fund these candidates. There are several other groups on screen here we have discussed in previous episodes, and some new ones. Two new ones here are Progressive Victory and the Peace, Accountability, and Leadership PAC, or PALPAC. These are both new progressive organizations helping candidates at the federal level. Progressive Victory and organizations like Working Family Party also endorse trustworthy candidates at the state and local levels. The last shout out goes to the Sunrise Movement, a group dedicated to building a movement of young people to end billionaire rule and stop the climate crisis. Individually, our power, our ability to change the world around us is limited. However, the more of us working together in solidarity could be our way out of this mess. I am not guaranteeing it will work, but it is still worth trying. Links to these groups and approved candidates we discuss will be in the video description. With all that stated, let's now discuss the state of Indiana, their primary election process, and which candidates, if any, are secular lefty approved. Indiana is a state with an average U.S. population, just under 7 million people. This population size gives them 9 seats in the House up for election. Indiana does not have any senators on the Class 2 schedule, so sadly neither of their Republican senators are up for re-election. Their governor is the geriatric Republican Mike Braun, and currently most of their House reps are Republican. Before talking more about these individual seats, let's first discuss the primary election process the candidates must navigate to win. The information provided from Ballotpedia here tells us that Indiana state law requires closed primary elections. What this means is that all registered voters in the state must be affiliated with a party to vote in their primary election. What closed primaries does is silence the voices of independents and other non-affiliated voters. While you may not want to register with a party in closed primary states, this is what is required for you to vote in the primary elections. Millions of people not participating in this primary process is what allows AIPAC and U.S. corporations to push through their preferred corrupt candidates in both parties into the general election. When that happens, as it so commonly has, Americans are then correct about the general election. Voting no longer matters in that race. The Epstein oligarchs won, we lost. So this year, in 2026, don't allow them victories in the Democratic primaries. To win the primary elections in Indiana, candidates will need a plurality of votes with no minimum requirement. There will be no runoff elections for these candidates. They have one chance to convince voters they are the best candidate to represent their interests. In some races, there might be 10 or more candidates running. The winning candidate that moves on to the general election may only win around 25% of the vote. But if that is the most of any candidate, then that's enough to win. If you are an eligible voter in Indiana, this next bit of information is very important. This is from the National Conference of State Legislatures. If you are not registered to vote or need to change party affiliation to Democrat, You have 29 days before the election to register, and you can register online. However, after April 6th, you will be unable to change your voter status and unable to support a secular lefty approved candidate in the May 5th primary elections. That would be a shame. So go get that voter registration taken care of after this video. Let's now discuss the candidates. As mentioned earlier, the majority of their current slate are Republicans. Only 2 out of 9 seats are Democrats, and neither of them I find inspiring enough to be re-elected. In the 1st District, Frank Mervyn is an AIPAC Dem, but currently there is only one other candidate running against him. I found nothing inspiring by that challenger either, and no third party or independent candidates worth mentioning. Some of that information could change, but at the moment, Indiana's 1st District doesn't have an option who will represent the people of that district. In the 7th District, the story is a little different. The incumbent Dem does not take AIPAC money, which is good, but that is where their good policy choices end. He failed to support Al Green's article of impeachment against Trump back in June of 2025, and I have seen no record of support for Medicare for All or other important policies. I would have preferred to name a challenger, but there are 3 other candidates running, and nothing inspiring about any of them for me to say one who's worth supporting. The same could be said of the 2 Nicks in Indiana's 2nd District. This isn't to say I know everything about these candidates. I could be wrong, and there is more information out there that might make one of these candidates better than the other one. But my time and resources are limited. It is also the candidate's job to provide information to the public to explain why they are the best candidate to represent you. There are plenty of opportunities to make you a potential voter aware of their policy message. I understand websites can be expensive, and that is an additional problem for grassroots campaigns. But if candidates aren't utilizing free social media options and YouTube, that usually means 2 things. 1, they are bad at campaigning. And from that alone will limit their potential no matter how good their policies and intentions may be. The second, and not necessarily mutually exclusive, is those candidates are corrupt politicians being vague and saying nothing of substance on purpose. Those funded by special interests, they say enough to trick primary voters to vote for them. Phrases like, "I will protect healthcare," or "our law enforcement should follow the law." These statements are clearly not good enough and aren't meant for us anyway. Those statements are what insurance companies and prison contractors, respectively, are looking for. Private health insurance companies have been making billions off our failed healthcare system, and private prisons are now making billions more with ICE concentration camps. Here's a great article written by Aaron Reichlin-Melnick at the American Immigration Council. In it, he provides great detail of the money trail from Congress's $45 billion given to ICE in 2025 and how that is now being spent for concentration camps managed by these private prison corporations. Link to this information will also be in the video description. My point here is these companies are making money from these human rights abuses and other dystopian policies. Then, they use a portion of that money to invest in political campaign puppets who use that money for those ad buys who, once in office, pass policies to make the cycle repeat. That is their game. And we must change that by defeating their Epstein-class puppets in these primary elections. That is why, staying with these 2 examples, I look to candidates who clearly state, "I support Medicare for All and abolishing ICE." These statements represent an understanding of the root cause of our problems and a willingness to rally support for the passing of legislative policies that help everyone. In the other 6 districts, not every candidate will support every policy I listed earlier. However, we must all remember someone is going to win that primary election. Do we just allow the Epstein class to continue going unopposed? Or will we support candidates who will work to change our current dystopian nightmare? These 6 candidates are not the lesser of 2 evils or the least worst option. Indiana voters in the 1st, 2nd, and 7th districts will unfortunately have that choice to make, and I'm sorry. Next time in 2028, making some assumptions there, but putting them aside for now, hopefully in 2028 there will be a secular lefty approved candidate running in all 9 districts and one running to replace Republican Senator Todd Young. For now, let's discuss the 6 candidates worth supporting in Indiana for the May 5th, 2026 primary election. In the 3rd District, we have Kelly Thompson, who is running unopposed, so we'll have at least one victory in the primary elections here in Indiana. Voters in the 3rd District, just because Kelly is unopposed, you should still go out and vote on May 5th. There will, maybe not always, but in most cases, are other state and local level elections that you should also participate in for the betterment of your community. All of our time is limited, so I understand the difficulty of researching every election, office, and candidate. But that is also the work needed to make your local communities better as well. The success of New York's Mayor Zoran Mamdani continues to be a fantastic example of the community's victory there, and hopefully something we can replicate across the country. I wish I could provide more info, but my focus for now is on the federal elections. Moving on to the 4th District is John Whetstone. In the 5th District is a candidate I am most excited to see win, Jackson Franklin. He started his campaign, like several approved candidates, early in the election cycle last year. He is endorsed by Track APAC and Citizens Impeachment, and has, in my opinion, the best campaign policy page of the candidates I reviewed in all of Indiana. He is running in a crowded race of 7 candidates for the 5th District. Having a good policy platform is one part, but for these candidates to win, it still requires the real work of meeting your constituents where they are and earning their vote. If Jackson is as good of a candidate as I believe he is, then once the votes start being counted on May 5th, we'll find out if the voters in that district agree. The final 3 candidates are Cynthia Worth, running in the 6th District, Mary Allen, running in the 8th District, and Brad Meyer in the 9th. These are the 6 candidates we're supporting in the state of Indiana for the May 5th primary elections. Hopefully, on Election Day, we'll see these candidates move on to the general election. I can't guarantee they would all win in the general election. All of these districts are currently Republican, but as we are seeing around the country with earlier election results this year, many of these seats are beginning to flip. Let's just make sure we don't only just flip these seats to blue, but more importantly, flipped to candidates who will fight for the people, not the Epstein class. There is one final secular lefty approved candidate I'd like to shout out before ending this video. If you watched my previous video on the March 3rd primary election results, then you'll know why I'm doing this brief segment. For those of you who missed it, I recommend checking out that full video, but here are the main points. In North Carolina's 4th District, Nadal Alam was only shy of about 1,200 votes from defeating APAC and AI money-taking puppet Valerie Foushee. Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader in the House from New York's 8th District, had helped move money from APAC and AI donors into Foushee's campaign and other groups who bought ads to benefit her campaign. Jeffries and the Epstein class worked together to defeat Nadal Alam in North Carolina's 4th District. Now, the majority of American voters must work together and help end Hakeem Jeffries' career in New York's 8th District. New York will vote on June 23rd. Their candidate filing deadlines close on April 2nd. Currently, there is one candidate running against Hakeem Jeffries. His name is Vance Bostic, and his policy positions make him one of the better secular lefty-approved candidates. Currently, New York candidates are collecting signatures to make the primary ballot, with that deadline ending in early April. If you live in New York's 8th District and want to help with this effort, his campaign Discord link will be listed below in the description, and you can go learn more there. If Vance Bostic gets the required amount of signatures to make the primary ballot, he will need as many volunteers ready to help spread his message to reach the most voters. This year, the voters in New York's 8th District could have a choice of a candidate who will represent them, not the Epstein class. And that really is the focus of this whole 2026 primary election analysis series. Putting in the work to help educate others of what candidates in their state will represent them, or continue the policies that protect the Epstein class while the rest of us suffer and die. It's time to change the majority of Congress members. Hopefully the 6 Indiana candidates mentioned today can join the other winning secular lefty-approved candidates moving on to their general elections. So far, out of the first 3 states that voted on March 3rd, we have at least 13 and potentially as many as 16 moving on to the general election. Several candidates in Texas still have a runoff election on May 26th. Depending on my schedule, this video's release will be right before or shortly after the Illinois primary, and I am extremely excited to see how those results finalize after the March 17th primary. The next videos on this channel will review Ohio's primary election, who vote on the same day as Indiana on May 5th. Shortly after, there will be another Secular Lefty chat discussing the Illinois primary results. More videos will be released throughout this year for every state's primary election, so be sure to ring that bell to be notified of my newest videos to stay informed. If you found anything I said in today's video useful, please share it, give it a like, and subscribe to the channel. Let's educate and make the United States and the world a better place together. Until the next video, consider checking out my other work on this channel. If you are in a position to support an independent creator, please consider supporting my Patreon to help with these video projects. Thank you again for listening, and take care.